All right, everybody, welcome back. Hope you guys are doing better than I am. I'm still just kind of pushing through here. And, it occurred to me, I actually remembered earlier today that I got sick not that long ago, and this is not cool. This is not how it's supposed to work for me. Typically, I get sick very rarely, and when I am sick, it hits me really hard. And I was just thinking about it earlier today. I was sick during the baseball playoffs. I remember being really sick during the Mariners Tigers playoff series, so, kinda not cool that I'm going through this again, but, just gonna keep on going through, and we do have some stuff to talk about today because tomorrow's actually a pretty significant date on the NFL calendar. So, I want to go ahead and prepare you guys for the franchise tag window. It opens tomorrow. I don't know exactly what time it opens. It doesn't really matter that much. But let's talk about franchise tags because the Seahawks may be using theirs this season. All right, guys, before we go any further into the video, I want to take a minute to tell you guys about my friends over at Sleeper. Sleeper is a one-stop shop for all your sports needs. Download the app to your phone. You can celebrate and chat about sports in real time with other users. You can get scores, news, and alerts with blazing fast speed. And you can play in daily fantasy leagues and win real money on picks contests. So enjoy sports together. Download Sleeper today, and don't forget to use my promo code SBN for up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Plus, they currently have a free $20 entry, no deposit required, just make an account. Terms and conditions do apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states and growing. So check out Sleeper and have fun with sports this year. All right, so most of you guys probably know what the franchise tag is, but let's go ahead and briefly go over it. The window for placing a franchise tag on a player opens tomorrow and runs through, I believe, March 3rd. So it's a 2-week window where teams can decide whether or not they're going to use their franchise tag. If you go through this article here, yeah, it starts February 17th, which is tomorrow, and finishes March 3rd. So you've got 2 weeks to decide who you're going to put the tag on. And basically, every team in the NFL gets one franchise tag that they can use, and there's also a thing called the transition tag, which is almost never used anymore, I feel like. But the franchise tag is basically a one-year deal equal to the top 5 players at that position, their average annual salary that you can put on a player, and they have no ability to decline it. The only way they can decline it would be if they just choose to not play, or they can ask, can you trade me? Can you take it off? There are things. But basically, it's a mechanism by which an NFL team can keep a player that doesn't want to be there, or at the very least, make sure they get something for him. Because if you franchise tag a player, you can then trade them even though they're not under contract for the upcoming season. Or if a team were to just sign the player outright, you can technically top the offer in the franchise tag, but you would have to send back 2 first-round picks, which very rare that a team is going to be willing to do that. So basically, it's a way that a team can make sure they at least get something out of a top player. Now, the thing about the franchise tag to understand, teams do not like using it, and players don't like getting it. So it's kind of a threat, and it's kind of a negotiation tactic more than it is an actual thing that either side wants to use. The team doesn't like to use the franchise tag because a franchise tag is effectively a one-year deal that is going to be exorbitantly expensive. And you have no ability to put the cap hit into other years because it's just the one-year deal. You're basically saying, okay, we're going to pay this guy this really high amount of money against the salary cap for 1 year, and we have no way to mitigate that cap hit. Like, for instance, let's say the Colts put the franchise tag on Daniel Jones. You can see the franchise tag is 47.3 million. Now, the way Daniel Jones played last year, he's probably worth $47.3 million. But that's on a long-term deal where you can stagger out the cap hits, get the cap hits in the early years lower, and then do void years on the back end to get the overall cost down a little bit. it's not so much meant to be like 1 year where the cap hit is just out of control. So, teams do not really like using the franchise tag for that reason. It's kind of a thing where most of the time a team will use the franchise tag, and then they'll try to negotiate a long-term deal before the end of the offseason. So don't be surprised if you see some players get hit with the franchise tag and then have it taken away later when they agree to a deal. So the franchise tag is not final. It is something that can be put on a player temporarily to keep them in place until a long-term deal can be reached. I know that players sometimes do play on the franchise tag, but it doesn't happen all that often. Most of the time, teams want to come to an agreement on a long-term deal, and so do players. Players don't want to be on a 1-year deal because if they get hurt, if they have some disastrous season, mostly because of injury, then it might just be done. They have no guarantees beyond the current year. Players don't want that either. So neither side really wants the franchise tag to be in place during the season. I think teams like it for the offseason because they can use it as kind of like uh, a pretty powerful weapon in negotiation. But understand that neither side actually wants the franchise tag to be active during the season, except for very, very rare situations, like maybe a kicker or a punter who's really, really good. Maybe then it's okay. But other than that, it's pretty uncomfortable. Now, the franchise tag is very interesting for the Seahawks this year. There are players they could definitely choose to use the franchise tag on. And usually, quite honestly, in recent years it's felt like we usually do not have anybody that you can even consider using the franchise tag on. The last time I thought about using the franchise tag seriously was probably like it was probably Geno Smith. And even that would have been pretty darn uncomfortable. So let's take a look here. So obviously we don't have a quarterback. We don't have a wide receiver. Rashid Shaheed is good, but there's no way you're going to be able to meaningfully threaten a franchise tag of almost $29 million on Rashid Shaheed. Linebacker, Drake Thomas is restricted, so there's no need to whip out the franchise tag there, so nothing there. Offensive line, nothing going on there. We don't have any starters hitting free agency. Josh Jones is our best free agent to be offensive lineman, and obviously he's not getting franchise tagged. Defensive end, we're not franchise tagging Boye Mafe. He didn't have anywhere near a good enough of a year to justify that. Defensive tackle, like Brandon Peely, no, definitely not happening. But when we get into the bottom part of this little chart here, and you look at the amounts of the tag, you start to get a feel for where this could happen, like cornerback. So let's think about this for a second here. So follow me through. Cornerback. We've got Reek Woolen. I'm not talking about Josh Jobe. I don't think Josh Jobe can be meaningfully threatened with the franchise tag. There's no way Josh Jobe is worth 21.4 million. I like him. I think he's worth more than most people, but he's not worth 21.4, not even close. Woolen, on the other hand, I think it is I think there is a universe. I think there is a world where the contract that Reek Woolen gets this offseason from whoever is on the level of 21.4 million per year. He could get like 24 million per year. I would not be that surprised. He has insane ball production. His ball skills are incredible. He's incredibly talented. He was a starter or at least a partial starter on the top defense in football. You could see Reek Woolen getting this kind of money per year. Now, the franchise tag is kind of interesting here because I don't think this team wants to keep Reek Woolen. I don't. Or at the very least, they're not willing to keep him at the price that it would take. I don't think you can pay Reek Woolen the money that he's going to need and then also extend Devin Witherspoon to some monster contract. I think that's bad business. And I think that in a decision between Witherspoon and Woolen, Witherspoon wins every time. However, if you do not need the franchise tag otherwise, what you could do is franchise tag Woolen and then trade him later because this is going to be a coveted player. It is. I know he's flawed. I know he has issues. One of the teams in the NFL is going to covet him, and they're going to be willing to give him a lot of money. And as long as they're willing to give him a lot of money, if you are the Seahawks, maybe you toss that franchise tag on him and say, hey, you got to give us a pick. You got to give us something if you want Riq Woolen. And it doesn't have to be a lot. It could be like a third round pick. It could be not anything over the top, but it could be something to make sure you, at the very least, get some kind of return on that. Because the thing with Woolen is that if you let him go and he signs a big contract in free agency, you might get a compensatory pick, but that's not going to be until next year, and it's contingent on how active you are in free agency this year. So by franchise tagging him and then trading him, you guarantee you get the pick rather than leaving it up to other elements. So that might be one way to guarantee you at least get something for losing a valuable player. And Riq Woolen is a valuable player. So that's number one. Number two, and this one would be tough to sell, but I think Kobe Bryant is going to become one of the higher paid safeties in the league. I just don't know if it's going to get up to this point. Right now, the safety franchise tag is $20.9 million. I could see Kobe Bryant getting up to like $14 million a year. So it's a little bit tough to really threaten a franchise tag on a player that is not really in that in the range of the best safeties in the league. But there is at least a little bit of thought you could pay to the idea of franchise tagging Kobe Bryant and using the franchise tag as either a trade to force a trade or to force a better deal in negotiations on a long-term deal. I'm not a big fan of that one because Kobe might be cool with just playing out 1 year on a $20.9 million. That's a lot of money. He might be fine. So I don't know about that one, but I guess it's on the table. Tight end, we don't really have a free agent tight end this offseason of note. Running back, though, yeah, this is probably the most interesting one, and I saved this one for last because it's last in the list, but also because I think this is the one we're most likely to use. There have already been multiple reports that the Seahawks are going to use the franchise tag on Ken Walker if they cannot come to a contractual agreement with him this offseason. And it seems relatively likely to me we're at least going to initially use it. Because, like I said, the franchise tag window's these next 2 weeks, starting tomorrow. So therefore, unless you come to a contract with him in the next 2 weeks, which is going to be hard, you probably need to whip out that franchise tag. And the franchise tag for a running back is about $14.5 million. That's a little bit more than what I expect Ken Walker to get in terms of average annual value, and we'll have more conversations about that later. But to me, Ken Walker, with the way he played in the postseason and winning Super Bowl MVP, I would not be that surprised if his next contract was somewhere around $12 million a year. I'm hoping we can come into that $11.5 million a year that James Cook got from the Bills, but it wouldn't shock me if it ends up going to like 12 or even $12.5 million a year because he did have such a good postseason and because there's no more room left on his contract. When James Cook was extended by the Bills, he had a year left on his rookie deal. So he probably kind of worked with them a little bit more than Ken Walker will be willing to. Now, James Cook is a better player than Ken Walker. He's done more in this league, but Ken Walker is coming off an incredible postseason run and a Super Bowl MVP. So I imagine you're going to have to use the tag. And I do think there's a universe where you do have Walker playing on the tag in 2026 because it's not an exorbitant cost, right? 14.5. If you get him on a long-term deal, the first year cap hit would probably be like 7 million. It's not a huge adjustment. And obviously I don't really want that to happen, and neither does the team and neither does Walker, but things are kind of situated in such a way that I could see the team and the player not being able to come to an agreement that is better than the tag. All right, I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. That's a rundown on the franchise tag stuff. We'll see what the Seahawks do, but expect them to use it on somebody. All right, more videos coming soon. Go Hawks.